which reading task integrated with the vocab task and so on. Kita ingin mencoba meskipun sepengetahuan saya maybe uh, maybe I was secara spesifik ada vocab test atau pronunciation test atau grammar test. In fact, sudah kan, tetapi kita ke komunikatif kan, komunikatif interpersonal and transactional communications, kemudian berbasis functional as a teachers sebagai guru we need to understand that in not only language skill that there are also a language component is tentang apakah grammar test meskipun secara mandated kurikulum ini tidak ada di dalam kurikulum yang kita adopsi secara nasional. Okay, without any further screen time and everything to Ibu Lili, Ibu Tiana, dan Ibu Rahmawati.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you, Miss.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon, Miss Hannah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we are from Group 4. Would like to deliver about our topic for today, but before presenting about our presentation today, I am as the moderator would like to introduce about our members group. Our members group consists of first is Miss Notiana Lestari, the second is Miss Ramawati, and the last I am. For the first material, it will be presented by me. But before presented about my material, I'm going to deliver about the table of content. The table of contents, the first is the nature of vocabulary. The second is the place of vocabulary in language assessment. The third is sample of vocabulary test. The fourth is the definition of grammatical ability. The fifth is sample test of grammatical ability. The sixth is the nature of pronunciations. And the seventh is pronunciation criteria for reading. And the last is pronunciation test with technology. The first, the nature of vocabulary. Introduction. Before we start to consider how to test vocabulary, it's necessary first to explore. It's necessary first to explore the nature of what we want to assess. Our everyday concept of vocabulary is dominated by the dictionary. We tend to think of it as an inventory of individual words, with their associated meanings. From this perspective, vocabulary knowledge involves knowing the meanings of words, and therefore, the purpose of vocabulary task is to find out whether the learners can match each word with a synonym, a dictionary type, definition, or an equivalent word in their own language. Next, what is a word? In the nature of vocabulary, we also discuss about what is a word. A basic assumption in a vocabulary testing is that we are assessing knowledge of word. But the word is not an easy concept to define, either in theoretical terms or for various applied purposes. The words such the, to, and in that leads to the question of whether they are to be regarded as vocabulary items. Words of this kind, articles, prepositions, pronouns, conjunctions, auxiliary, and etc., are often referred to as function of word. So article, prepositions, pronouns, and conjunction is are referred to as function of word. Next, words not only take in fictional endings but also have a variety of derived forms, which often change the word class and add a new element of meaning. An example is the word leak with the effective verbs leaks, leaking, leaked, as well as thus derivatives leaky, leakness, leakage, and leaker. Even though there is a distinction between the literal laws of fluid and the more metaphorical laws of secret information, all these words are closely related in verb and meaning, such a set of word verbs sharing a common meaning is known as a word family. Next slide. In nature of vocabulary, we know also there is homograph. What is a homograph? There are single word form that have at least two meanings that are so different that they obviously belong to the different word families. One commonly cited example in the noun of bank, which has two major meanings. The first is an institution which provides financial service, and the sloping ground beside the river. The next slide. And what about larger lexical items? Talking about larger lexical items, the second major point about vocabulary is that it consists of more than just single word. For a start, there are the phrasal verb, get across, move out, put up, with the J and compound nouns, firefighter, love letters, practical joke, personal computer, applied social science of magnesic, which are generally recognized as lexical units consisting of more than one word verb. It's mean that larger lexical it's mean that larger lexical items more than one word verb. The next slide. According to the Nettiger and the Carrigo at 1992 have developed the concept of lexical phrase, which is a group of words that looks like grammatical structure but operates as a unit with particular functions in spoken or written discourse. They identify four categories of lexical phrases. The first is polyword, and the second is institutionalized expressions. The third is phrasal contrast, and the last is sentence builders. Next slide. And then there is a reason. What does it mean? What does it mean to know lexical items? The mean to know lexical item, the first is knowing a word means knowing the degree of probability of encountering that word in speech or print. For many words, we also know the sort of words most likely to be found associated with the words. The second, knowing a word implies knowing the limitation on the use of the word according to the variation of function and situations. The third, knowing a word means knowing the syntactic behaviors associated with the word. The fourth, knowing a word entails knowledge of the underlying verb of a word and the derivations that can be made from it. And the last, knowing a word entails knowledge of the network of association between that word and other words in the language. Knowing a word means knowing the semantic value of word. Knowing a word means knowing many of the different meanings associated with a word. We go on to the next slide. Here are the tables of components of word knowledge. In components of word knowledge, there is verb, positions, function, and also meaning. For the verb, consists of spoken verb and written verb. For the positions, there is grammatical patterns and collocations. And the functions. For the function, consists of frequency and appropriateness, and the meanings is consists of concept and associations. In spoken verb, it is include of what does the word sound like, how is the word pronounced, and for the written verb, what does the word look like, and how is the word written and spelled. grammatical patterns, it include of in what pattern does the word appear, in what pattern must we use the word, and collocations, what word of types of word can be expected before or after the word. And the next, what words or types of word must we use with this word. For the functions, there are frequency and appropriateness. For the frequency is how common is the word and how often should the word be used. For the appropriateness, it is about where can where can this word be used. For the meaning, it includes of concept and associations. In concept and association, there are what does the word mean and what word should be used to express this meaning. Now we go on to the next slide. We go on to the next slide. Okay. Next is about what is vocabulary ability. Talking about vocabulary, there is also vocabulary ability. According to the expert of Bahman and Pelm, at 1996, general construct of language ability, like Bahman's construct definition, includes both knowledge of language and the ability to put language to use in context. Thus, its three components are as follows. The first is the context of vocabulary use. The second is vocabulary knowledge and fundamental processes. And the last is metacognitive strategies for vocabulary use. Now, we go on to the next slide. The second subtopic, the place of vocabulary in language assessment. Next slide. Talking about vocabulary, the place of vocabulary in language assessment, here are language assessment divided into multiple choice. Here are the example of multiple choice. Multiple choice, choose the correct answer. Principal was irate. We see here what the student had done. A, surprised. B, interested. C, proud and angry. And the next is after multiple choice, there is completions. Completion means write the missing word. At least like this one, like in our slide, there is example of completion here. And the last is matching. Matching means is matching means match its word with its meaning. In here, there are five numbers, number one until number five, and we try to match number one until number five with the optional A until G. Next, we go on to the next slide. In vocabulary in language assessment, there is recent trends in language testing. According to the Bachman and Palmer framework, language knowledge is classified into numerous areas, as presented in Table 1 and 1. In here, areas of language knowledge, according to the Bachman and Palmer, there is organizational knowledge, grammatical knowledge, textual knowledge, functional knowledge of ideal function, saklo, sakloling, saklingulate knowledge, and the last is knowledge of dialectal varieties. Okay. Next, vocabulary assessment. As you know, there are three dimensions of vocabulary assessment divided into three. The first one is discrete. Discrete is a measure of vocabulary knowledge or use as an independent construct. And the second is selective. Selective means a measure in which specific vocabulary items are the focus of the assessment. And the last is context independent. Context independent means a vocabulary measure in which the test taker can produce the expected response. In discrete, there is embedded of embedded a measure of vocabulary which were part of the assessment of some, and comprehensive a measure which takes account of the whole vocabulary content of the input material, whether this is reading, listening tasks, or test takers. And context dependent. For the context dependent, a vocabulary measure which assesses the test taker ability to take account the contextual information in order. Those are three dimensions of vocabulary assessment. Now we
Hah?
go on to the next slide.
Enggak, gue lagi itu. Lagi
Well, for the last
nge-wifi.
subtopic is about sample of vocabulary tests.
Gue lagi nge-wifi. Lagi kuliah gue.
Next slide. Okay.
Enggak.
For the sample
Orang
of
yang di rumah.
vocabulary test consists of four. The first is the voluntary level of test. The
Hah?
second, the
Apa?
Eurocentris vocabulary size test or EVST. And the third is the vocabulary
Iya.
knowledge
Orang
scale
bentar
or
tuh. Karena saya
VKS.
pinjam
And the
pinjam
last is
tiga.
the test of English as foreign language or
Dah
TOEFL.
ya. Dah.
Next. The first is the voluntary level of test. The vocabulary level test was devised by Paul Nations at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand in the early 1980s centuries as a simple instrument for classroom use by teachers in order to help teaching and learning program. The design of the test is divide are divi- the design of the test is divided into five parts representing five levels of word frequency in English. The first is 2000 word, 3000 word, 5000 word, the university word level beyond 5000 word, and 10,000 word. The words for each level were selected on a random basis, but with the proper nouns and compound words included, so that the result of the test gave reasonable indication of what proportions of the total word. Next, the second is the Eurocentris vocabulary size test. Like the vocabulary level test, the Eurocentris vocabulary size test or EPST makes an estimate of a learner's vocabulary size using a graded sample of words covering numerous frequency levels. Next, the vocabulary knowledge scale. For the vocabulary knowledge scale or VKS is generic instrument which can be used with any set of word that the tester or researcher is interested in assessing. It consists in effect of two scales. One for eliciting responses for the task taker and one for scoring the responses. Here are the table of self-report categories and possible meaning of scores. Next. And the last sample of test is the test of English as foreign language. The primary purpose of TOEFL is to assess whether foreign students planning to study in tertiary institutions where English is the medium of instructions have a sufficient level of proficiency in the language to be able to undertake their academic studies without being hampered by language-related difficulties. TOEFL consisted of five sessions. The first is listening comprehensions, English structure, vocabulary, reading comprehensions, and the last is writing ability. There are two types of vocabulary test items which were labeled sentence completions and synonym matching. The first type provided a story definitions in a sentence verb in the stem with a gap in it, like this. Uh, a is used to eat with, one plow, two fork, three hammer, and four is needle. And the second is the other kinds was more basic, presenting a word or phrase in the stem in splendid isolations. such police. Police means what does it mean by police or the synonym by police? One, clever, two mild, three silly, and four is frank. Well, that's all the material about assessing vocabulary. For the next material will be presented by Miss Rahmawati. For Miss Rahmawati, time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Lilik. Uh, the next material is about definitions of grammatical ability. What is the grammatical ability? Uh, Grammatical ability is the combination of grammatical knowledge and strategic competence. It is specifically defined as the capacity to realize grammatical knowledge accurately and meaningfully in testing or other language use situations. Next slide. And the next is sample test of grammatical ability. Next. Describing grammar test talks. Traditionally, there have been many attempts at categorizing the types of tasks found on tests. Some have classified tasks according to scoring procedure. Given that main goals of a task is to elicit performance, we will discuss test tasks according to the types of response. We will refer to selected response. The second is limited production, and then the last is extended production tasks. Next. Next slide. Okay. The first one is selected response task types. Selected response task types have many parts. The first part is the multiple choice or MC task. There are three example of multiple choice tasks. The first one is to design multiple choice tasks to design test grammatical form, morphosyntax, and word order. uh, Although the first pair of this example provide context for the response, an understanding of this context is not essential to get the item correct. This item is designed to test grammatical form, or more specifically, syntactic accuracy. Semantically, all four answer choice will probably convey the meaning. However, syntactically, only one answer is correct. This item will be scored right or wrong. And then example two is to design test grammatical form and meaning cohesive or ellipsis. Example two is a slightly different kind of multiple choice task. The input is presented in the form of an agency pair. But in this example, person B needs to understand the previous utterance in order to respond as expected. And this item is designed to test cohesive form and meaning. More specifically, it is aims to measure ellipsis and referential meaning across the two trans. And then the third example is to design test grammatical form and meaning multiple areas. Example T, the first is agency paid. In this example, it involves compliments about a new haircut. You got a new hairdo. I love it. The second agency pair is consists of an expressions of gratitude, thanks, an assessment of the new hairdo. I look ridiculous. This is the expert response. Next slide. The second part uh, of selected response text type is multiple choice error identification task. Uh, for example, multiple choice error identification task designed to measure grammatical form Present and multiple choice error identification test to design assess grammatical form or more specifically the use of the preposition on with food. We will also argue that this is designed to measure lexical form size on food is a fixed or lexicalized expression. This item will be scored right or wrong. Next. The next is the matching task. The matching task designed to measure grammatical meaning denotations. Uh, Matching task present in which the input is present in the form of a paragraph with underlined words. This is followed by a list of meanings. Example of directions of matching text: match the letter of the underlined words with its meaning. Write the letter on the line. Next. The next part, the next part of uh, text type is the discrimination tax. The discrimination tax is to design to measure morphosyntactic meaning. This present expressed with the language or noun input along with two response choice that are similar or contrast in some way. Response possibility include true, false, true or false, right or wrong, some different, agree or disagree, grammatical, ungrammatical, and so forth. Put to one image with two contrasting sentences. In this way, several pronoun meanings could be constructed. He delivered it to her. She delivered it to him. One problem with discrimination tax is that low ability tests can significantly increase their scores above their ability level simply by guessing. The next is the noticing task. The example of noticing task is designed to measure grammatical meaning, morphosyntactic meaning. Directions: circle when it refers to the habitual past, underline it when it refers to the present or future. The notation task, also referred to uh, as a kind of consciousness basing task, is intended to help students process input by getting them to construct a conscious form meaning representation of grammatical feature. Alice, 1997. And for this reason, it seems to be particularly effective in promoting the acquisition of new grammatical points. And the final type of selective response type is the grammatical ability judgment task. The grammatical judgment task present learners with sentences that are either well or ill formed. Learners must then decide if these sentences are acceptable or not. There is some debate as to whether grammatically judgment tasks step into grammatical knowledge or whether they are simply a measure of the student's grammatically knowledge. For this reason, grammatically judgment tasks are almost exclusively used in second language acquisition research and not in other testing situations. Next. The next is limited production text type. Limited production text type are intended to assess one or more areas of grammatical knowledge depending on the construct definition. Unlike selected response item, which usually have only one possible answer, the range of possible answers for limited production tasks can at times be large even when the response involves a single word. The part limited the gap filling task is present input the form of a sentence, passage, or dialogue with a number of word delete. Examples below is a gap filling text designed to measure grammatical form and lexical meaning. More specifically, it aims to measure morphosyntax form of the simple and habitual past tense verb forms and lexical meanings. The two intent criteria for correctness of grammatical form measure in terms of morphosyntax accuracy of the simple and habitual past tense forms and lexical meaning score in terms of the lexical meaningful of word that fit the context. Next slide is about the short answer tags. Uh, for example, present examinations with the input in the form of a job advertisement. An application form contains a set of implied questions. Examiners are expected to respond in short answer. This task aims to measure grammatical form and meaning. In order, in order to fill out this application form, examiners also need to draw on personal or imagine information. The scoring of this item is likely more complicated because some answers can be scored right or wrong with one criterion for correctness and other with multiple criteria for correctness or by means of a random sample. The next is the dialogue or discourse complication task or DCT. The DCT is present input the form of a sort of a source exchange or dialogue with an answer chunk of part and a chunk deleted. Examples below is present a DCT with three chunks, an agency pairs, and a closing chart. This task is designed to measure morphosyntactic form with second conditional and grammatical meaning in the form of a suggestion. Example, discourse complication task designed to measure grammatical form and meaning on the discourse level. Next slide. And the last is extended production task. What is extended production task? Extended production task is aimed to elicit large amount of data of which the quality and quantity can, can vary greatly for each test takers. Given the real-time nature of some of these tasks, they are hypothesized to measure implicit grammatical knowledge. Sorry. Uh, the part of extended production tax is the information gap tax or info gap. Example of information gaps is present an info gap task designed to measure the examiner's ability to use areas of grammatical knowledge to exchange information. More specifically, it aims to measure the student's knowledge of morphosyntactic forms and meanings. It questions formation and interactional forms and meanings repair back channel device. This task can also be scored for task fulfillment. The response should be audio taped and the score using a rating scale rubric specifically designed to assess the morphosyntactic and interactional forms and meanings. Information gap task designed to measure grammatical form and meaning on the sentence and discourse levels. The next part is storytelling and reporting tasks. The task present text takers with prompts that require them to use information from their own experience or imagination to tell a story or report information. Report text is to design measure grammatical form and meaning on the sentence and discourse levels. Next. The next slide is the role play and simulation tasks. The task present test takers with a prompt in which two or more examiners are asked to assume a rule in order to solve a problem, collate, or actively make a decision or perform some transaction. Next slide. The example of simulation task is to design grammatical form and meaning on the discourse levels. Simulation text is a problem solved. The prompt contains a description of the situation and the test taker's goals. It also provides suggestion of carrying out the discussions. Finally, it contains a description of three possible rules to assume solving the problem. Examiners are randomly assigned to one of the rules and given the 5 minutes planning time before engaging in the discussions. Examiners are then assigned to groups of at least 3 people. Each group contains at least one representative from each role, as examples uh, that I give in the slide. That's all for me. The next material will be explained by Miss Noviana Lestari. Miss Noviana, time is yours.
Yes. Thank you, Miss Rahma. We move to the nature of pronunciation. We go to the next slide, please. The assessment of second language speaking proficiency has been of central interest to researchers in applied linguistics since the first discussion of communicative competence. However, research on pronunciation was marginalized in part due to its association with discrete aspects of oral production. Is now emerging as a reticulized field inquiry with its own important implication and concept. Part of the regression can be attributed to a shift in focus from perception of attentiveness to broader aspects of performance, primarily intelligibility and comprehensibility. One of the critical issues involved in assessing pronunciation is determining to what extent the measures of pronunciation construct are valid or valuable. Harding argues that second language pronunciation assessment presents unique challenge in drawing valid inference from performance to score assignment to the ultimate decision for which a pronunciation assessment was intended, and to the pedagogical and social consequence beyond. He raises legitimate questions. Are administration and scoring procedures accurate and consistent? Does the task used in assessment elicit relevant target features? Does the test yield a score which is fit for decision-making purposes? Is the assessment fair? While such accuracy can be generally perceived across all types of language assessment, some of them are central to the concept of validity in second pronunciation. In all pronunciation endeavors, the importance of listeners cannot be underestimated, and background characteristics that listeners bring to assessment tasks have been found to influence their evaluation of attentiveness, comprehensibility, and intelligibility. In this volume, two research chapter examines listeners' speech adjustment and the background factors that affect their evaluation speech. Because either syncretic listener judgment pose a threat to both the reliability and validity of personal tests. Listeners become readers when they are trained to read to a scale. Jan and Ginter discuss the difference between listeners and readers and the effects of reader training in speaking and pronunciation assessment are highlighted. On a more technical side, second language pronunciation involves many acoustic features of the speech stream, such as the quality of vowels and consonants, the presence and placement of pauses, as well as broader, measurable components of prosody, stress, rhythm, and intonation. We go to the next slide, please. Now, we will discuss about pronunciation criteria for rating. The following chapter describes the most common pronunciation features that have been investigated in second language research and examines their use in speaking skills. We provide suggestions that serve a middle ground between second language research and current practice in speaking descriptors. We first present descriptive accounts of the pronunciation features that have shown to be important variable in ESL or EFL pronunciation and oral assessment studies. We describe each features and its use is different field. We then over the type illustration of the extraction and measurement of a select number of those features. Next, we will report on the use of those variables in the standardized test criteria and way in which test scales reflect recent developments in pronunciation and assessment. We end with the recommendation for future research. The suggestions we provide are based on the current trends in the second language speaking assessment research, but they are tailored to fit requirements of standard speaking skills and the capabilities of its readers. We go to the next slide. Current conceptualization of pronunciation features. The first is segmental features. Segmental features are phonetic characteristics that occur at phone level, that is, at the consonant on vowel level. Researchers identified the sounds already found in a speaker's first language and compared them to the sounds he would acquire in the target language. The main premise was that if sound was shared by or similar in both languages, then it would be relatively easy to acquire. Conversely, difficulties were expected when the second language sounds were not found or were produced differently in the first language. Segmental features have been shown to partially contribute to the variance in a proficiency ratings. The importance of the segmental is further reflected in research on automated speech assessment, which examines segmental features and deviation such as upon duration, vowel quality, syllable production, voice one time or VOT, and stop closer duration. In this section, we will discuss some of the most common segmental features investigated in the second language pronunciation and their subsequent use in the assessment research. The first is about consonant features. I'm sorry, Miss Opie. Yes, consonant features. While other consonant features were examined in earlier research that investigated asynchronous the language difference. Voice one, voice one set time, VOT, and stop closure duration have been most frequently addressed in more recent second language pronunciation and assessment research. Voice one set time is defined as the time between the release of the stop closure and the start of the vibration of vocal cord. Different languages have different times at which a stop is released. The next, stop closure duration. This feature is measured through the sudden burst in amplitude that is observed when the glottis is constructed to produce a voice consonant. Researchers measure the distance from when the spike occurs until the release burst, which signal the ending of a consonant. This duration is typically much longer when producing a voiceless consonant than when producing a voiced one. The subphonemic feature is almost never included in standard speaking descriptor, of course for good reason. Even if human reader is somehow trained to audibly detect the closure duration, it will be quite taxing to keep track of every duration and deviation from the norm. The next, vowel features. Vowels are generally described by referring to two main acoustic characteristics, frequency and length. Second language pronunciation and assessment have identified both frequency and length as the predictors variables regarding accent, detection, and variance proficiency levels. Vowel formants and vowel space. Unlike consonant, vowels are produced at several frequencies. By measuring these frequencies, mainly the first formant and the second formant, one can determine where the note of the vowel is produced. A formant is used in the phonetic to mean the vibration of the vocal tract in its measure in hertz in a unit, a measure of frequency. Then we have vowel duration. Though not as common as vowel space and formant, is measured to identify and evaluate second language speakers' oral production. Researchers have measured vowel in English and proposed a set range for its monophthong and diphthong, which made it easier for deviation to be detected. Moreover, vowel duration is not only considered in itself to be segmental features to measure, but it is also one which signal other segmental when the word final consonant is a voiced one. The vowel length is significantly reduced in comparison to when the consonant is voiceless. We go to the next slide, please. We're talking about suprasegmental features. Suprasegmental features are those that occur beyond the production of the bone itself. These features have been examined in the recent studies on second language oral production and proficiency. Earlier research focused on one or two suprasegmental, including fluency and prosodic, speech rate, stress, prominence, and tone height. A large number of suprasegmental features have been later incorporated in oral assessment and second language pronunciation to measure their relative significance and oral proficiency, attentiveness, fluency, or intelligibility. The following section provides a detailed description of the suprasegmental features most commonly used in the both second language speaking or oral assessment studies. The first is fluency features. The term fluency has been used to refer to different concepts. Some studies consider this notion as synonymous to province. That is, speaker is evaluated based on his fluency level. Other traits, this construct has a hypernym that comprises several sub-features. Combine the way speakers use these sub-features have been shown to distinguish among preferences level. Descriptor design for standard tests have used fluency in the more semantic sense. Next, we have pauses. A pause is usually defined as the silent or fill time between two rhymes. Two types of pauses are of interest to second language pronunciation, filled and silent pauses. Filled pauses have been described by some as having a specific function. Silent pauses are instances of complete silence between runs. Current research on automated evaluation most often employ pause as a feature in the model. This inclusion has several purposes: to assess human-computer coder reliability, to test the ability of the computer model in assessing second language learners, and to examine natural speech. Next, we have speech rate. Speech rate is measured by dividing the total number of syllables by the total speaking time, which includes all pauses between runs. Some researchers also consider hesitation and false start when counting the number of syllables. Next, we have prosodic features. Prosodic features are suprasegmental properties that influence oral production, especially when producing connected speech. They have only been recently added to some regression automated models in order to identify first language speaker features and compare them second language production for evaluative purposes. And the next we have stress. Stress is usually identified as the syllable in any given word that has the highest values for the following measures: pitch, length, and intensity. These phonological features becomes especially problematic with multisyllabic words, when a speaker has to choose one syllable to carry primary stress. English is a lexical stressed language, which means that the syllable carrying primary stress is arbitrary in the any given. This becomes an issue if the speaker's first language is syllable time or has a fixed stress pattern. And we have prominence and tone height. Prominence and is extension of primary stress because it is a syllable that carries the main stress in a tone unit. Brazil in 1997 identifies a tone unit as a stretch of speech that is most often dilated by silent pauses and which carries one or two prominent syllables. Here, he argues that speakers select a syllable in a given tone unit and assign prominence to it for various communicative purposes, including emphasis, the presentation of a new information, and contrast. Research that investigates prominence following Brazil research intonation framework generally focus on two features: the key and the termination syllables. Let's next go to the next slide, please. If a researcher is exploring key and termination syllables, he would choose from six possible options. The first is high key. Key syllable carries a high pitch. Mid key. Key syllable carries an average pitch. Low key. Key syllable carries a low pitch. High termination. A high pitch registered on the termination syllable. The fifth, a mid termination. An average pitch registered on the termination syllable, and the last, low termination. A low pitch is registered on the termination syllable. Tone choice. Tone choice is another prosodic characteristic that researchers measure on the termination syllable in tone unit. And then pitch, range, variation. Pitch range is measured by subtracting the maximum FO from the minimum AFO of prominent syllables. We move to next slide. Here illustration of pronunciation analysis. The following section provides illustration of selected pronunciation features that have been described in this chapter. The first is voice onset timing, VOT. Is measured by accounting for the interval of time between the release of the stop and the onset of the voicing. When is the value is short? The speaker most likely started the voicing immediately after the release of the consonant. Next, vowel formants. PRAAT also allows a user to get automated F1 and F2 frequency. The dot horizontal lines on the spectrogram represent the different frequencies. The third is vowel duration measurement. Vowel duration is relatively easy to measure and can be done on any of the software mentioned in the introduction. One would begin where the preceding sound is completely inaudible and measure until the place where the following sound can be heard. The fourth is pauses. Measuring pauses duration is fairly straightforward because one can easily see the exact location of the pause from the amplitude and pitch analysis or from the spectrogram. And then stress. The stressed syllable is in a given word is identified as the syllable that typically has the highest value in the following categories: length, pitch, and amplitude. And then we have prominence and tone choice. Therefore, this syllable would be flagged as a prominent syllable, since there is a significant rise at the beginning of the syllable and then a drop towards at the end. This syllable would be marked as prominent with a rise fall. That's the next slide. This is the current practices and contribution. The first is segmental features. Segmental features have been proven to be significant predictors of oral proficiency in second language pronunciation studies. These features, however, are not as strongly described in the language test or assessment descriptors. In addition, unlike their descriptive chapters, segmental features are frequently combined under one major category. And supra-segmental features, fluency features. Speaking descriptor define fluency in more semantic sense, rather than a broad term with several sub-features. That is fluency whether the production flow easily. The IELTS, for example, uses the term fluency to mean the speaker's use of connectors and his ability to produce coherent language. Speech rate and pauses have been identified as significant factors that readers consider when evaluating speech. Prosodic features, particularly intonation, have been recently added to revised version of the test descriptors. And stress and prominence have also been mentioned in some of the speaking class. The CLE test incorporates both classical stress and prominence in the description of pronunciation features. The next slide. New direction and recommendation. Based on our comparison between pronunciation features examined in second language research and those incorporated into oral assessment scales, we can recommendation on two different levels. Number one, the selection of the different constructs, and number two, the description of those constructs. Next slide, please. The following section details in the new direction we recommend speaking skills move toward. Our first recommendation that certain features be incorporated into the band descriptors, particularly those that have been proven significant in second language speaking and assessment research. Our second recommendation is that its construct assessed be task specific. Our third recommendation is the employment of ASRs for the addition of a larger selection of features, particularly prosodic one. Our fourth recommendation is to ensure consistency in the use of the definition of pronunciation construct among different speaking descriptors. Next slide, please. Let's move to pronunciation test with technology. Yep, we can move the next slide. Automatic speech recognition, ASR, research and application of its technology for second language. Instruction and assessment have grown considerably since the 1990s centuries. One of the first automated pronunciation evaluation system was developed to assess the pronunciation quality of Japanese learners of English reading aloud. The following section describes how the systems are developed and how proficient or native reference speakers can be used as a model against which to compare learner pronunciations. The next section illustrates how features of speech are extracted and weighted to score some construct of pronunciation such as word sounds, stress, and intonation. The final section looks ahead to future possible uses of the assessment technology through the lens of English as an international language. A. Next slide, please. Current methods and consideration. Speech recognition modeling. When an automated scoring system in use with ASR technology for assessing pronunciation, broadly speaking, there are four main underlying components that perform the task. These four components, too, these processes do not happen in order of listing, are the acoustic model, the language model, the pronunciation dictionary, and the scoring model. The acoustic model is like a repository of sounds, a probabilistic representation of variation of the sounds or phone in English. The language model represents a square of words that a speaker might be expected to say. It is a probability distribution over squares of words. The third component is pronunciation dictionary, which lists the most common pronunciation of the word in the language model. And the final component, often referred to as a scoring model, uses features generated by the previous described system to give a score. We move the next slide. Acoustic model and intelligibility. Put another way, the question that test developers should be asking themselves is, whose pronunciation should we regard as the standard against which to compare learner speech? Depending on the answer to this question, the speech data that test developers should collect for training acoustic model might vary. Clearly, the purpose of the assessment and the intended use interpretation of the test score should also be taken into account. Fortunately, in the context of automated evaluation, this issue can least partially be overcome by developing the most appropriate acoustic model from the speech of pool of reference speakers, who have been judged by many listeners as having the desired speech characteristic. Two example cases are discussed here. The first case, suppose that the developers want to develop an assessment system for evaluating the pronunciation quality of India's English speaker. And another example, imagine test developers who want to evaluate the pronunciation quality of English learners globally. The next, the next slide, please. Their consideration in the use of ASR technology. There are two other important distinctions for automatic pronunciation evaluation. These are whether the system is speaker dependent or speaker independent, and whether the speech is constrained or unconstrained. Concerning constrained versus unconstrained speech, constrained speech implies that we know what the word the speaker might be attempting to say. For example, the speaker is reading aloud a passage or repeating a sentence that was given to him or her. Here, the speech processor job is easier because it has an approximate idea of what the speaker will say and how they should say it. Next slide. We move to the next slide. State of the art in the pronunciation scoring. As discussed elsewhere, the pronunciation is normally considered to consist of segmental features and suprasegmental features. Segmental features refer to sounds such as a consonant and vowels. Suprasegmental features include aspects of speech such as intonation, word and syllable stress, rhythm and sentence level stress, and scope. Next. Spectral match score. An example of the spectral match score is phoneme segmentation acoustic like pool based on the native acoustic model. In other words, how closely do the learner's consonant and vowel match the consonant and vowel of the collection of province speakers. It is a common misperception that automated scoring systems are limited to evaluating pronunciation accuracy of vowels and consonants without reference to their importance in the comprehensibility. Next. Fundamental frequency and energy. In the speech processing, the measurable aspect of speech underlying these traits are: the first is fundamental frequency, the second is energy, and the third is duration statistic. We move again to the next slide. Duration features. Duration statistics such as the articulation times for a segment or intra and inter word silence are features of word stress and rhythm. For articulate segment of speech,
Kemarin sampai 57
durational measures are
menit.
actually closely related to AFO and energy. Yes, miss. Next slide. New direction and recommendation. It is likely that innovation in this space will continue to be driven by new modeling techniques, such as deep neural networks combined with access to vast dataset and ever-increasing computing processing power. Another interesting possibility would be to produce separate scores for the three dimensions of pronunciation: intelligibility, comprehensibility, and accent tendency. Yep, next. Finally, this chapter begin best to distinguish between CAPT pronunciation remediation system and ACR pronunciation assessment system. As scoring models improve, there is the opportunity to close the gap between these two and a provide assessment system accurate and sophisticated enough to also provide the personalized remediation opportunities or advice. Such
Ini lagi
system would be of great
nggak ada tema.
utility to the second language
Lagi nggak ada tema.
assessment and learner
Di
community.
lagi nggak ada tema.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the presentation from our groups. Apologize if there are lags and mistakes. We need feedback from Miss Hannah and all of the friends. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Oh, thank you very much for all the presenters. This is very kind of comprehensive and long, and with I can see that kind
Long.
of very insightful new and latest information from me, because this one vocab, grammar, and pronunciations is not are not my expertise. I just knew that there is a ASR, what is it tadi? CPT. Oh, ada CPT ya, khusus untuk pronunciations. For me as a simple, kalau saya sederhana biasanya, okay Google, if Google understand me, so okay saya pronounce okay, atau hello Siri, what time is it? I don't understand what you mean. Oh, berarti saya salah bicaranya. Simple as that. Using tools ya, atau Duolingo or else that's for pronunciation. For equipped by the technology. I can see that, vocabulary and grammar, the items that you mentioned or you share on the screens, looks similar to the we have on the reading. Oh, di sini sepertinya bisa ini tes reading. Ini tesnya grammar, tapi itu banyak sekali tulisan like text or to like interpretations, micro and everything. Okay, that's so complicated. Ternyata core of this activity itu complicated, but the new ideas comes is if it is look the same with the reading, the language skills. How about we combine? So we test grammar at the same time we test reading. We test vocab at the same time we test writing. But it comes as a writing test, as a reading test, as a language skills, but it contains language component. Itu yang saya ide saya pertama kali. Bagaimana menurut Anda? Because maybe at schools there is no specific time to grammar test or vocab test. If it is formal school, public school, sekolah umum itu kan tidak ada khusus tes grammar. Biasanya kita mengacunya ke language skills. What do you think? And for pronunciations, my thoughts, pikiran saya adalah with a lot of local accent and language variety, how we handle this students' pronunciations if local accents interfere, mempengaruhi, like they difficult to achieve or to reach some sounds like the sh, because of it's not in our first language. And how would you handle? Would you say like, oh, your pronunciation is good, or your pronunciation is weak or low because you're not sounds like native, tidak seperti native nih, jadinya low, atau you embrace the local accent even if the students say the, you say like for some accents they difficult to say they will say the or the sh. Some sounds like sulit untuk dipronouncekan karena pengaruh bahasa pertama, either bahasa Indonesia atau local languages. So how you handle? Practicing or just kita terima saja memang ini perbedaannya, or else that's the thoughts of me as a in the level of pronunciations. Okay, I think that's all for today. I don't have much time to more discussions in the virtual Zoom sessions like this, because I have more session. If you want to give more your thoughts and long discussions, I give a space on WhatsApp group. Jadi Anda silakan, dan saya membaca di sini tulisan-tulisan Anda, pendapat-pendapat Anda tentang topik ini di WhatsApp group. See you again next week for another topic, language test development, Bahman and Palmer. Please be there karena saya akan memberikan sneak peek atau trailer ya, spoiler dari soal ujian. Jadi soalnya saya akan beritahu di sini ya, di Zoom ya, bukan di WhatsApp group. Jadi Anda dan saya beritahu directions, petunjuknya supaya Anda bisa memahami instruksi apa yang harus dikerjakan di tes itu sehingga Anda bisa mendapatkan nilai yang maksimal. Itu tujuan saya. Jadi saya memberikan directionnya tidak hanya tertulis tapi juga oral next week. So be there. See you again next week. Have a nice day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Miss. Thank you,
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Miss.
wabarakatuh.